Alrighty, so today I'm sitting down for another discussion type video. The title of this video is going to be something like, in defense of playing old or retro games. And the reason why I feel compelled to make this video is just that, for one thing, the sort of just been on my mind a lot ever since I started collecting retro video games, and then the vibe around remasters, re-releases, reproductions, everything going digital, no physical, all of that, and then the general vibe I get from the rest of my friends and the rest of people I know that most of them are not choosing to collect or play retro games in any way, which is totally their choice. But just that, I think that while there are more than enough people on the internet to sit down and talk to you on a retrospective about any given game that they like, and everybody is pretty familiar with how to download an emulator for your phone or your computer and play Pokemon Emerald for the millionth time, I think that collecting as a whole seems like it's something where you're putting in money and you're trying to make an investment or something like that, when that's really not what, at least in my opinion, majority of the people I know that actually buy games like this are doing. And I think for the most part, people don't understand how beneficial getting into something like this can be if you actually like playing video games. So I guess I'm just gonna kind of talk about that for a little bit, and maybe people agree with me, maybe they won't, I don't know, but that's kind of the point of this video. And I brought down a stack of different games that I pulled off the shelf just to kind of give an example of what I'm trying to talk about. But the main point that I want to get across is that now more than ever, even with the prices of certain retro games being at a peak, and people's wallets are tightening because of what's going on in the economy right now and inflation and all that kind of stuff, as a person that likes to play video games, it becomes harder and harder to not only afford, but keep up with everything that's going on. Just this week, we're going to have Spider-Man 2. We just recently got, a couple of great games a couple months ago, in that being like Final Fantasy 16, Starfield. If you're planning on buying Metal Gear Solid Master Collection 1, to get 1, 2, and 3, that's another, $70, I think, price tag that you're going to pay 4 days from buying Spider-Man on the 20th. And just, on top of that, think about how much time people are spending in free-to-play games and then spending money on cosmetics and all that kind of stuff. And, the pay-to-win cycle that exists in similar games and things like that. The whole landscape for modern gaming is, on one hand, pretty awesome because we have a lot of cool games coming out this year, but also pretty dystopian from the standpoint of okay, am I now going to spend $70 once a month, also have to buy this $600 machine to even be able to run these games? And that is not even talking about if you want to get on PC and you could build a cheap PC, but if you're like me, to hit the kind of performance that you want to do, you end up spending $1,000, $1,200, even $2,000, depending on your situation. It's feels like it's a very expensive hobby to be into. And even if you only buy a couple games, then you don't get to participate in the wider discussion about games as a whole and what's happening and talking about certain games with other people, what have you. So you may be saying, why do I talk about all that? This is supposed to be about retro games. Well, personally, I think many people don't understand how cheap and how valuable your purchases can be when you're buying these older games. And to put it into perspective, you may be like, well, gosh, I can't buy any more video games because I don't have any money. I can't get a PS5 because they're $600 or whatever, and they're hard to find, maybe still, I don't know. But the reality is, if you walk into a place like in the Midwest, we have this stuff called Disc Replay or Mega Replay, or we even have the Exchange. I've heard of other places in different parts of the country called Game Exchange, and there's also those mom and pop game stores or secondhand media stores like Half Price Books, stuff like that. while you may hear that certain video games are now worth $100, $200, $300 and they're so sought after, this represents such a small portion of the games as a whole that it's almost laughable. Like, some systems are a little bit more expensive than others. Like the PS1 is becoming more expensive to collect for, even for the like popular games that everybody owned. I think last year I bought Spyro the Dragon for like $25 complete at one of these stores, and it was a really good copy. But it's just like, wow, you know, a game that was as ubiquitously owned as Spyro is $25. That's actually pretty high for the majority of games. Like, anyway, my point is, if you walk into one of these game stores on any given day, or you go on eBay, or you go on Facebook Marketplace, or you go on Goodwill auctions online, or you even go into Goodwill in some very, very rare cases, you can get, let's say, for example, a PlayStation 2. I would say the going market rate for a PlayStation 2, slim or not slim, seems to be anywhere between like $50 to $80 to maybe $100 if you buy it at one of these secondhand stores that refurbishes them and makes them all nice again and good to go. But for that small purchase amount, you are now open to the largest collection of video games that have ever been released. And to act like there's no value for what you could get out of any of those games is honestly absolutely silly, right? And just to give you an example, and some of these video games are on more the expensive side that I'm going to show you, but by expensive, I mean like $30. Like, if I paid half price for a normal video game, it made me feel like I was paying too much, even though these are all like great games in and of themselves, but not all of them cost that much. But for example, if you are really into playing sports games, one game series that you can't even buy a new version of today because they discontinued the series, but is extremely fun and covers multiple sports, including football, basketball, and I think even soccer, is the, you know, like EA Big Sports Street series. So here I've got NFL Street and NBA Street, and I think they made 2 sequels for each of these games on both the PlayStation 2 and maybe even the PSP. But these are games where it's almost like NBA Jam, where it's got like an arcade-like format to it, and your characters can do all these different style moves and do silly stuff. And like, I don't even like to play stuff like NBA 2K, even though I have been into that in the past. But like, once I put these ROMs on my Steam Deck, I literally played NBA Street only. Like, the majority of hours that I have put on my Steam Deck are playing NBA Street emulated. Just hours straight playing game after game after game, getting more characters and more characters, and just being like absolutely sucked into it. And to be honest, I think I paid $20 for this game, and I think I paid more for this one, and it was maybe like $30, $35. But to put it in perspective, that's literally less than half price of a brand new video game today, right? And they're extremely fun. You'll have tons and tons of hours. You can have your friends over, play with them, and all it took you to be able to even purchase this game and like be on the platform is buying your $50 to $70 PlayStation 2. Similarly, everybody is really into the new God of War series where Kratos is in the Nordic pantheon and all that. I too am a great fan of God of War Ragnarok and God of War 2018. But many of us, either we were too young or we just didn't have a PlayStation at the time, or we just didn't even know it existed. But the previous God of War series, I think I personally was into games news like when the third one came out, but by then it was on PlayStation 3 and I had an Xbox, and you know, I couldn't care less. But these games, this older sort of action adventure God of War series, are some of the best action adventure games that I have played in my entire life. The first time I played this game, I promptly played it basically another 5 times just because of how you get into like this sync where you just, now a lot of people play this game and they just smash the buttons and that's fine. But if you actually try to learn how to play the game and get into the rhythm of how you're supposed to deal with certain enemies and stuff like that, this game is like almost therapy in a sense that I can sit down, I can play it, I can destroy a bunch of demons and hellspawn or whatever, and just get into like a flow state, clear out my brain, and then I'm good to go. And for the high price of maybe, I think I paid $20, I was able to get like 6 12 plus hour playthroughs of fun experience. So, just putting that in perspective, that's huge. Another one, because I'm going to try to speed up this video a little bit. Another one is like, obviously this requires a little bit more investment, but Guitar Hero. All the Guitar Hero games are extremely cheap. Obviously because you have to have the equipment to play them. But this is actually the copy that I owned and I never sold as a kid. But if you go out there in the wild today, you can get copies of different versions of Guitar Hero for like $10, $15 across the board, whichever one you want. Some of them during Christmas time become more expensive, I guess because other people are having the same idea of wanting to play Guitar Hero. But the game still holds up. Like my PlayStation 2 version of this, me and Mary Elizabeth played it a couple weeks ago for like 2 weeks straight. Every night we were like, all right, let's unlock some more songs. And we got a lot of fun out of it in 2023. It aged really well. This is like back before video games just got thrown in the trash after you were done with them. You know what I mean? And they were built to be played for a long time, and they still hold up. And if you dig into these systems, you may find other games that you didn't even know you'd be interested in, but you have a lot of fun playing. One of them being Evil Dead: A Fistful of Boomstick. Here we have a tie-in game to the Evil Dead universe, voiced and everything by Bruce Campbell. That's actually just a pretty fun action-adventure game where you're running around as a guy with a chainsaw with a hand and a double-barreled shotgun as an additional weapon. A lot of fun. I played this a lot on my Steam Deck as well once I got it. That's kind of like why I have it, is to play ROMs, to be honest. But the reality is, these games still hold up. And I think this is one of the more expensive games I purchased when I first started collecting, because I was spending a lot of money at the secondhand stores, which there's a little bit of a premium there. I think I paid $30, $35 for this game. And I definitely got more than, say, 12 to 20 hours of good time out of it, right? Again, another game you could think of. If you walk into, I know for a fact right now at one of the places that I frequent, if you want to buy a new PS3, or not new, a used PS3, but for yourself, to open yourself up into that entire library of games, it could cost you on Facebook Marketplace, let's say it could cost you $80, $100. If you walk into one of these stores, the worst one might cost you $100. The most expensive one is maybe $125. Same generation of games, and honestly, the better box, if you don't care about trophies, is the Xbox 360. I see that routinely sold at one of these secondhand stores, nice, cleaned up, refurbished, for $85, $90, right? Then you opened up an another generation of games to play. Some that you may not have even played before, or others currently have remasters, and the cheapest way to play them might actually be buying the old one. So for example, let's say that you really have a hankering to play a Star Wars game, but you don't want to spend $70 on Jedi Survivor, and for some reason you don't think you can get Fallen Order for cheap. To be honest, I think I bought Fallen Order for $20, so that's an anomaly. And I think a lot of people got it for free on PlayStation Plus, but let's just imagine that you want to play a new Star Wars game and you don't have a lot of money. Star Wars: The Force Unleashed, and even though it's very short, even the sequel, Force Unleashed 2, are two amazing action RPG games in the Star Wars universe, following a very interesting plot as you play as Darth Vader's secret apprentice, who basically has absolutely cracked Force abilities that allow him to just manhandle stormtroopers left and right. This game cost me like $20, maybe even $15, right? And think about how much fun you could get out of this. And even if you're on PlayStation, maybe you platinum it or something like that. But like these games are still out there. You can still buy them and they can still be played, and they're extremely cheap compared to buying a brand new game or even like a current generation used game. Another example. Right now I know that there's definitely the Return to Arkham, and that's on PS4. So that may honestly be the cheapest way to even play this. But imagine you want to play Batman Arkham Asylum and Arkham City. Like, these are two of the biggest games from that generation. Tons of fun, superhero games. If you want to get into that, maybe you don't want to purchase Spider-Man 2, even though it looks like it's going to be the quintessential superhero game. Like, you can really save some money and have a great time by just purchasing stuff like this instead. Here we have two games that probably cost me $15 a piece that you could spend endless amount of time playing and trying to complete. Another thing, if you're looking for unique games, there is stuff that you probably didn't even know existed when you were playing Call of Duty 24/7, right? For me, I actually knew and played about this game in the past, which is why I bought it again, and I'm sure many others of you knew about it as well. But for example, an excellent unique shooter is Transformers War for Cybertron and Fall of Cybertron, as here we play as either Transformers or Decepticons in a third-person shooter / vehicle game that honestly I personally have not played another game that gives me the same vibe. And I had tons of fun with this game, not only as an 8th grader with me and my friends, but also as an adult today playing through the campaign once again. Like, it still holds up. It's still a lot of fun. And this is literally I don't know what it costs today, but I know that I spent probably like $15 on it, Again, like, versus $70. Like, come on, dude. And then another thing I want to talk about is handhelds. Like, if you want to buy a PSP and play the entire library of PSP games, let alone the opportunity to jailbreak and root your device and add all these emulators and play ROMs on it as well, which the PSP is great at doing, especially for easy stuff like Game Boy and things like that. There are all sorts of games on the PSP that are amazing because people were actually trying. Like, for example, last year I bought Burnout Legends from a secondhand store for $20, and once I put this thing in my PSP that I got for I think $40 on Facebook Marketplace, I played that for like 2 weeks straight because it's insanely fun. And this entire experience only cost me, $15, $20 for the game, right? And if you want to count the system too, I mean, that's another $40, but you're discounting the fact that you can be into every other game that's on there as well. And then finally, I just want to bring up some other stuff too. Like, for example, Nintendo stuff can be very dystopian. Like, if your idea of collecting retro video games is to get a whole bunch of GameCube stuff, like, good luck. And that would be the one weak spot in the argument that I'm trying to make, is that certain systems do have a very hard to collect for sort of thing going on. And for GameCube and Nintendo stuff especially, the games that were the most popular games are actually sometimes the most expensive to get secondhand, even though it's about backwards for every other system. And I'm in no way a collecting expert, so don't take my opinion on stuff as fact. I'm just giving you what I understand to be the case. But let's take, for example, the Wii. Did you know that in any given format, I guarantee you today you could find a good Wii for $50 with all the accessories you might need. And then, if you're lucky, it comes with Wii Sports. But if it doesn't, Wii Sports is not at all an expensive thing to find. It may be $20, which is kind of expensive when we're talking retro games, but there you go. But think about how much fun Wii Sports is, and having friends over, and like even adults that today used to play Wii Sports back in the day. And given the opportunity to play it again, everybody gets super excited and wants to play it. And you are literally not able to do so because you didn't spend $20. You know what I mean? Basically, my point is, if you want to play video games and you want to have a good time playing video games, you actually don't have to spend a lot of money, nor do you even have to buy new games. There's an entire library of other games that you can buy that, now, while the examples I showed you today were all games that I already know I really enjoy and I spent $20 to $30 on, many of the games I have back here, I spent $5, even, $10 on for the most part. And each of them was a game that I already knew I wanted to play because they were somewhat popular, or I knew the series became popular, or what have you. But my point is that right now, it seems like people have no interest in playing these games, or they don't even realize that you could just go out to your local, Mega Replay, Exchange, whatever, and find this stuff, buy it, bring it home, and immediately start playing a bunch of games. But like, if you had $100 in your pocket and you went and you bought a PS2 and you bought, 2-3 games, that feels like a much better use of your $100 than buying the collector's edition of Call of Duty next year. You know what I'm saying? So, while I ended up just showing you guys a bunch of games that I like, I hope that my point is resonating, where I really think that we should have some sort of resurgence in buying and playing these older games, because even if you are somebody that is a big weirdo and is, concerned about graphics that you were more than happy playing back in the day, these games really do hold up. Most of them PS2 and before play at like 60 frames per second, no problem, 60 hertz, no problem. Obviously the PS3 generation was a little bit rough, but there's an entire library of stuff that you're missing out on. And in addition to that, even something as recent as the PS4 is now going to be extremely cheap, as people are dumping and dumping and dumping copies of games to try to buy stuff for PS5. So even games that didn't even come out that long ago, that don't even look that different, are extremely cheap. Like, I guess I don't need to go into any more examples, but that's my point. Hopefully this wasn't too much of like an incoherent ramble, but my takeaway for you guys is like, I just really think that people are missing out on an opportunity to enjoy hours and hours and hours upon of games that they could get for cheap. And instead they're worried about, if the remaster of the remake of the game is going to come out for PS5, or if they're going to release Call of Duty 27, or if, the new game from Naughty Dog is going to be good or whatever. It's like, sure, all those things are great, and I absolutely enjoy new games. As you can see, I probably have bought too many of them, and I've even bought stuff that I've already owned on PS5 just to be able to play it there. So I understand that sentiment, but there are hundreds and hundreds of games that, if not thousands, that you have never played that are cheap as hell right now that you could buy instead of blowing all your money on new games. And I feel like I just want to signal boost that message for everybody out there. So hopefully this wasn't too much of like a bogus video, but that is something that I kind of wanted to talk about, and I wanted to get out there into the stratosphere. So I guess my recommendation for you guys is go pick up a PlayStation 2 and buy some games for it, or even a PS3 or an Xbox 360 or a Wii, and just have yourself a good time. So for cheap. So that being said, that is my discussion I wanted to have today, and I hope you guys have a great rest of your day. Like, comment, and subscribe if you feel like it. If you disagree with me in any way, or you are a retro game collector and you want to sound off in the comments, or you're somebody that hates playing old games and you think I'm absolutely psycho for buying as many as I have, then also I would love to hear your opinion in the comment below. But that's the video. That's my discussion. Buy retro games, buy physical stuff. It's the move. Have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you guys on the next one.